please put your hands together for Congresswoman Grace Napolitano, who was first elected to Congress in 1998. She's currently serving her 11th term in Congress. She's a member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and chairs the Subcommittee on Water Resources and the Environment. In 2001, after learning that Latina adolescents had the highest rate of attempted suicide of any ethnic or racial group in the country, Congresswoman Napolitano started the Youth Suicide Prevention Program, which now helps students in 35 schools across her district. Lulu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome.
Gracias.
De nada. So if we can start with just a little bit about your journey. You've obviously been a congresswoman for quite some time, since 1999, if I'm correct. So tell me how you grew up and your road to this position.
It's a little lengthy because I'm 82. I was born in Brownsville, Texas, 1936. I finished high school, and I went to work at the age of 12 because my father and my mother were divorced. So I had to work to help the family income. Graduated in 1954, married at 18, and moved to California at the age of 18. Worked for Ford Motor, worked for the State Department of Employment, and I started my career in politics when somebody asked me to run for the city council. I ran and won by 54 votes. And then
why did you want to run?
Well, the people themselves were tired of having council not accede to their wishes, not taking care of the obvious, security, public safety, just listening to the public. And so I ran and I won. And then 6 years later, I ran for the state assembly against 4 men. I won. and then I won for Congress. I ran against my predecessor's chief of staff, and I beat him with 619 votes. So I have gone along pretty safe in but I work hard. I listen to my constituency. I go home every weekend, and I take care of things at home, which is really what you need to do. We are representatives, not politicians on the side. You learn how to deal with it, but you have to take care of your district first.
With such a long career, how have you seen being a Latina in a public space changing? I mean, obviously you were among the first to be running and really advocating, and now there are more of us.
Well, that's because women are beginning to awaken and say that I can do it. And if I can do it with a high school education, anybody can do it. The thing is, you have to believe it, not only think it, speak it, but believe it from the heart. And that's the difference between women, that we take our family issues and translate them into policy.
I actually want to talk about one thing in particular, because I thought it was an interesting bill that you've proposed, a domestic workers' bill of rights. And I think this is a subject that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Tell me why you picked that issue to sort of
domestic workers? For. Well, because they work, and usually they're in the background. Nobody thinks about them. Nobody worries about them, and they are unseen. It's much like your gardeners. They're there, but nobody ever talks about them. And they work hard. They have families to sustain. So I think they deserve a fair wage.
And what would you like to see happen?
Well, that they are covered with insurance of some sort, that they have a fair wage, that they have vacation too, just like anybody else. Maybe not to the point that the office work or something, but something to help them and their families.
Talk to me a little bit about what it's like to be a Latina in government at this particular moment. Obviously, there is a lot of focus on the Latino community and a lot of talk about immigration.
Well, let me kind of, excuse me, backtrack, because when I first came to Congress, you could throw a bowling ball down the halls of Congress and not hit a Latino or Latina. Honestly.
And people tried.
We tried very hard. Well, that's where CHCA, the Hispanic Caucus, which I was president of one time, I started building up that minority to be able to show kids that they can succeed. But when I came to Congress, very few women were here. Nidia Velazquez and Lucia Roy Ballard were, and Ileana were about the only ones here. Now we have 14. Well, when women run, people didn't make much of it. No, you can't win because you're a woman. This is a man's world. Well, guess what? It's a woman's world more than anything. Because, like I said, women think, speak, and act with their heart. It is now changing the demographics. More women are attempting, they're at the local level, city council, supervisors, school boards, and that gives them ammunition, so to speak, to be able to come to Congress and advocate for themselves.
We have prominent Latinas in Congress now, among them Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's been the subject of scrutiny by the president, to use a word. I'm wondering how you see that kind of visibility. Do you see it as beneficial?
Well, yes, very much so. It's getting new Latinas to voice their concerns, because I guess maybe sometimes we get jaded after so many years, and it takes a force from outside to come in and kind of push the envelope a little bit. And I think she's doing that, and I think she's doing a great job, except sometimes you have to understand how Congress works. There are seniority issues, there is a protocol, and those should be followed.
So you feel like maybe they've been pushing the envelope a little bit too much?
I don't think so.
No?
No. We need to push it more, believe me.
Do you feel at this particular point in time within the Democratic Party, there is a battle between different interpretations of the Democratic Party. There's the progressive wing and more traditionalist wing. And of course, it's all about what the American people want and what will win elections. So I'm wondering where you think the Democratic Party should head at this particular point, and how to get the Latino vote, which is going to be so important in 2020.
Well, the Democratic Party has always been for the worker, because essentially we advocate for Medicare, for health services, for education, for all the things that our community needs. Sometimes it is not easy because you have factions from other points of view, and so to bring them all together is like trying to herd cats. Everybody goes every which way. But the Democratic Party has a point in that we have to sustain the effort to make sure that people, especially minorities, get heard, that they have a voice. And we need to do a lot more outreach into the communities, because we talk politics. We don't always go out to the community and talk to people like you. And we need to hear from you. We need to have that input, because without that, we're only doing what we think is good for you, and that's not always the right thing.
I mean, one of the criticisms of the Democratic Party, especially with Latinos, has been that they come every 2 years or every 4 years, but there's not really a sustained outreach. There's not really an understanding of the diversity within the Latino community.
Well, that depends on the leadership, and a lot has to do with who they put in charge of the outreach. And now it's changing a lot. The Democratic Party is putting in people of color. They're Black, they're Asian, they're Hispanics, and they can better relate to the people that we represent.
Where do you think, have you endorsed someone for the primary?
Nope, keeping my powder dry.
You don't want to do that here?
No.
I mean, you could. I'm just saying it's a thing.
Well,
I think we'd all love to hear it, wouldn't we?
They're great candidates. There are a few that are rising to the top, and I have an idea, but I just want to continue.
Why keep your powder dry?
Because I don't know who is first going to represent the people we are. Secondly, do they have the money to do it? And thirdly, can they convince other states other than California? California is blue, but you need people from all over to understand what they stand for, and I really haven't heard that much about it.
Julian Castro obviously is Latino. He's running for president and has gotten support from the Latino community, but not as much support as some would have thought. Do you think that Latinos have a responsibility to support other Latinos running for office?
Yes and no. I think they should support the best candidate is going to represent Latinos.
And what does
regardless
that
of
mean?
whether, well, if it's just a voice support, it's one thing. But show me what you're going to do for the Latino community and the Black community and the Asian community, for that matter.
Where do you see this presidential season going? Because we're at a moment when the very definition of what it means to be American is being discussed and challenged. And Latinos have felt that they're at the center of that in some ways. So what do you see as the key points coming up to 2020?
Well, there's key points, but essentially if the Latinos don't get out and vote, especially and get out in the census, we're going to lose seats if we don't get people out to report themselves for the census. But in the race, it's important that they realize every vote counts. And anybody can vote, should vote. You should reach out and tell people, your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, get out the vote, because this election is going to be critical for us, for everybody. Because we have the administration who is catering to the president, and we don't get a word in each way. Having the Affordable Care Act being challenged, education being challenged, the Roe v. Wade being challenged, I think it's important. It's critical.
What do you think about the citizenship question that they were going to put into the census? Do you yeah, obviously. Being a Democrat, I understand. But what do you think that the motivation was? Because on the Republican side, they will say, shouldn't you know who is a citizen and who is not in this country?
The reason for the census is to count how many people there are in the United States, not whether they're citizens or not. And that determines for local entities to get funding for the government to carry out programs that benefit the community that they represent. So essentially, it doesn't make any difference. Well, it does to the cities if they put it in, and people are afraid to sign up, as it is. It's hard to get people to answer census questions because they think it's invading their privacy.
Which brings me to my second question. Do you think that because this has already been a subject of debate, that has already worked? That there has been an idea that people now might not fill out the census, might not actually do what they're supposed to, participate in the way that they should, because there has been so much discussion around this already? Well,
I think people might think that a question is going to be in there, might not want to answer the census, but I think they should answer it because it benefits. Some of the people who will benefit the most are undocumented because they receive services from somebody. And if we don't get the funding to the cities because it's based on...
But many Americans will say undocumented people shouldn't get services.
They live here, they pay taxes. I don't see anybody asking you when you buy a house, when you buy a car, are you documented or not? They pay taxes. An apartment dweller, the owner of the property pays taxes. They charge them accordingly. So where's the beef?
I'm going to open it up now to questions.
Okay.
I've met my match. If anyone would like to ask a question, please raise your hand.
Good morning, Congresswoman. My name is Catherine Rodriguez. I'm currently interning for Senator Gillibrand. And for someone who is been serving for 11 terms. I wanted to know what is the biggest lesson you've learned and what is the most valuable thing you've experienced?
The most valuable thing is forge ahead, don't look back. Do you think whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's for the community, for your state, and then for your country, because I've told several presidents, my community comes first. They're the ones that elected me and got me here. Secondly, my state. Third, the country. If you don't like it, go talk to my electorate. It's important for us to realize that we're here to represent people, and that has been always my focus. Now, the most challenging things I've had is trying to pass a mental health bill, because it takes to pay for it. Means I got to find money, $200 million for it to put it in schools. I've had several bills in transportation. I've had bills in water. Water is important to it, and there are not enough women in the water, so keep that in mind. Yes.
Hi. Oh, wow, that was loud. Hi, I'm Selena C. Payne, and I go to school in Southwestern University in Texas. And I just had a
Tejana, all right. I was born in Brownsville.
Yes, we were excited. I just had a question about being Black and Latina. Both of our communities have a huge issue with talking about mental health and structural racism because, I mean, it's part of the internalized racism. And us to just ignore it. So I wanted to know, how do you think that we should talk about mental health and structural racism in our communities, as well as like the communities that actually are oppressing us?
Well, you have, first of all, you have to make sure that we start erasing the stigma in every race. Latinos don't talk about it, don't hear it. It's personal. You've got to talk about it because it is an illness just like stomach illness. It is important for people to understand that there are issues that we hold dear and we shouldn't. We should open them, seek help on that. Mental health, unfortunately, affects a lot of Latinas as well as African Americans as well as Asian. Back when I was chair of the Hispanic caucus, we formed a tri-caucus, the Black and the Asian caucus. So we all have the same values, the same needs, and the same motives for trying to work together to forge ahead. And it's important that we feel that, not separate ourselves, rather unite. Makes us stronger.
Yeah, I told my mother I was depressed. She's like, no le digas a nadie.
I got news for you.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for your time here, and this was really great.
You're welcome. I'm pleased. Thank you.
My name is Francis. I'm a local documentary producer. And I really was excited when you mentioned mental health, because I feel like that's not a topic that gets brought up a lot, but especially with the undocumented community. Like, it just feels that every day is just like another anxiety-ridden day, and it's like cruel and unusual punishment. So what are you doing, and what else are other Congress people doing in order to address mental health in the undocumented community?
How much time have you got?
I got as much time as you need.
Back in 2001, I started a project with $500,000 from SANSA, a pilot project, to put mental health in 1 high school and 3 middle schools in my district. It has now grown to 35 schools, and the county has taken over the funding of it to put clinicians on site to deal with bipolar, schizophrenia, all the ifs, ands, and buts, including bullying. I think back then, 20 years ago, nobody talked about it. Now it's more open. You're getting a lot more exposure to it. Just keep pushing the envelope, because I think that the communities are getting more aware that it's costing them money. The business costing them billions of dollars. So it's incumbent upon them to do it. Now, I started a mental health caucus some 18 years ago. Right now, Catco, Republican, is my co-chair. We have 102 members of the caucus. But what my staff does is there's a newsletter that goes out once a week. It gives information about what's happening in the mental health community. And I also have in my district a mental health consortium that meets quarterly at the City of Hope on mental health, and we talk about it. Other members are now beginning to introduce legislation. I would suggest you get with my staff and get information, and we can put you on the mail list.
We have time for maybe one short question.
I talk too much.
Ah,
Good morning. My name is Maybelle Perez. I'm a local from the DMV area, and I just wanted to say thank you for taking your time to come and speak to us this morning. My question to you is, as a young Latina, what advice would you give to someone like myself or others in this room who have a vision of themselves being on the Hill and have faced consecutive failures? What can we do to get more Latinas like myself and others, minorities, on the Hill and talking about issues like mental health, water and safety, public health, and things like that?
Interesting you should say that, because I think for anybody that's interested, whether you want to run for politics or whether you just want to intern in an office, you should go to an office that carries legislation or focus on what you like, because you can learn better. Volunteer. I started as a volunteer for the city of Norwalk. I was a sister city commissioner for 19 years. I thought everybody knew me. No, they don't. You have to get exposure. But I would suggest that you find either a school board, a city council, here I don't know what they call it, but volunteer to learn government and then go from there.
start local. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Let's give a round of applause to Representative Grace Napolitano.